So the next speaker is a personal friend of mine. He is a Vietnam veteran. He's been president of the Rotary Club. He's been successful in business and sales, and he's currently a real estate agent out of South Lake, Texas. And Milan Georgia has the first time that I met him, I just went and visited the local Rotary Club. And if you haven't ever visited a Rotary Club, I highly encourage you to do that, because it's a group of people who believe in the motto, service above self. And as I met Milan and I found out that he was a military veteran, I started asking him to share some of his experiences. And we have a group that gets together periodically, and Veterans Day was coming up, and I asked him if he would come and speak about his experiences in Vietnam. And when he did, as he started that talk, I could tell he started getting emotional, and he paused for a minute, and then he looked at us and he said, "Nobody's ever asked me to tell my story. Nobody's ever acted like they were interested in my story before." And one of the things that we as a society have done is ignored our Vietnam veterans, right? When they came back from Vietnam, there was a stigma associated with the war, so some of them were treated very poorly and others of them just melted into the woodwork. So you don't see a lot of Vietnam veterans that go around trumpeting the fact that they're Vietnam veterans. And now, many of you have heard me talk about staying on azimuth. When you have a veteran that's been off of azimuth for 40 or 45 years, how far away are they from having a good path, right? Where is their life now? Where could it have been? Many of them, like Milan, have become successful through it, but have continued to work through experiences that they had. When we're able to reach out and ask an older veteran, like a Vietnam veteran, to get engaged and help and connect and guide a younger veteran, it's not only good for the younger veteran, the Vietnam veteran gets great benefit out of that too, because a lot of the organizations today are only post 9/11. We can't forget about the Vietnam veterans. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Milan Georgia to the stage.
Yeah, pull me up here. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, as Carl told you, my name is Milan Georgia. I was a captain in the United States Army, and I visited Vietnam in 1970 and 71. Being a veteran and returning home was a whole different world. But what I'm going to talk to you today about is what I call the keeper of the castle. And that's you. The keeper of the castle is the person that is going to be responsible for your body, mind, and soul, or spirit, if you'd rather. A keeper definition would be a caretaker or a person who takes care of or maintains something or someone, and that's you. Not only what you do and how you do it, but as we'll proceed through this, you can also be of value to your brothers in arms. There I was, 1966, high school graduate, 4-year veteran of the band. We were singing rock and roll songs. I just flunked the United States Air Force physical. I was certainly secure with the fact that I would never go to that little country that I didn't even know where it was in Vietnam. And as I was so secure, I got this letter from a Democrat named Lyndon Baines Johnson. And he said, "I want you for my army." Now, he had just recently been highlighted for pulling his dog's ears, and I thought, that's really inhumane. But when I got this letter, I knew it was inhumane. So I figured, okay, Democrats, that's off the table. This guy did a little bit different than I did. He actually went in first, and you may recognize who this might be, and he played for the Special Services Division of the 101st Airborne. around Fort Campbell, did gigs all around the country, but never really got overseas. Later, he was discharged after his 2-year commitment, and he got out, shortened his name to Jimmy, and added experience to the back of it. The rest is history. So can you succeed? Any way you want to. But he was a good guitarist, to say the least, and a left-hander. Old guys have to do this. So there I was. I ended up in the United States Army, and they said, all right, well, as soon as I walked in the door, everybody said, you're going to go to Vietnam. You're going to go to Vietnam. And I got to thinking, I'm really tired of hearing this. And I said, so how is it that I'm going to go to Vietnam? And they said, well, that's where it is. That's where it's located. And you should resign yourself to the fact that you're going to Vietnam. We're going to make you a crazy man. We're going to make you an 11 Bravo. We're going to give you a weapon. We're going to teach you to kill. And you're going to be out there, and we'll let you loose in the jungle, and you'll win the war for us. And I thought, nah, that doesn't really sound like what I want to do. So I asked the liars, the recruiters, what could I do besides that jungle therapy? And they said, well, you can do almost anything you want. What do you want to do? And by then I'd fallen in love with the big boy toys, the .50 caliber, the M60, all the good things, especially the helicopters. And they said, you can't go there because to be a helicopter pilot, you'd have to go through warrant officer school. It's sold out, it's full up, we can't get you in. Unless, and I said, okay, unless you're willing to commit for a couple more years, then we might be able to get you in as a United States officer through Officers Candidate School. And after that, then you could learn how to fly helicopters and fulfill your destiny to go to Vietnam. And I thought, okay, all right, well, let's do that. In for a penny, in for a pound. I had to break the news to the band that I would not be back in 14 months. So I got into it, and I started flying helicopters. I got with these guys, the 116th Assault Helicopter Company, and I volunteered for their gunship platoon because I thought to myself, if somebody's going to shoot at me, I want to shoot back at them. But I had my choice when I got in country, and that was I was dual qualified. I could actually be an infantry platoon commander, or I could be a gunship pilot. I elected for the gunships. So I got in the gunships, and we decided we would be hot after this guy, Nguyen Sin Kong. Now, he had about 17 different aliases, but we knew him well as Ho Chi Minh. And every time the flight lifted off to go to an LZ, seems like we always ran into these guys. They were waiting for us. By 1970 and 71, all the government and the military ranks had been actually infiltrated by the communists. So we never knew whether we were dealing with a friendly or a not so friendly. We every once in a while would run into these young men who wore powder blue uniforms, a tan helmet, and a big red star right in the middle of it. So it made it easy to target on that star. And we'd try to get them every time we could. That was the NVA, North Vietnamese Army. Being gunship pilots, we just turned everything looking to look like that. We didn't really care at that stage of our lives because, like I say, it was pretty hard to identify a friendly. So we just thought what we'd do would be just kill them all and let God sort them out. But I had a motivational change when they reassigned me back to the States. It was garrison duty. and I was supposed to go to Logan Heights, the basic training unit of Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. When I got there, Logan Heights had been condemned, and they were actually taking it down. And I thought, well, boy, I'm in big trouble now. I'm an infantry officer. I'm rotary wing qualified, and I'm going to an air defense artillery base. None of these people had actually left their job slot. They'd been there for, some of them, 30 years. I was employed by several of those different air defense artillery colonels and generals, or as they elevated through air defense artillery. So I had to find a different job. On my way home to Fort Bliss, I got married. And 9.5 months later, my wife gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. There I am on post housing with her. President Nixon, a Republican, in 1973 decided that he was going to have a reduction in force on all NCOs and officers that didn't have the proper education to be in his army. So I scratched Republicans off the list. So now I'm kind of dovetailing it out there. I'm an independent. But after 5 years, 6 months, and 6 days, but who's counting, I'm a civilian again. And I'm thinking, okay, let's see. I got in the military. They taught me how to kill people. Then they sent me to OCS and taught me how to command people to kill people. And then I got in the gunship platoon and killed a lot more people. What am I going to apply for a civilian job? Well, I'm either going to be in the mob or the Cosa Nostra or the Dallas Police Department. They were flying these helicopters. Now, these may look familiar to you if you're as old as I am, and you date back to a cereal called Whirlybirds. If you don't remember that cereal, you can move forward a few years and remember MASH. And that's the exact same helicopter they were using in those 2 TV programs. I said to the guy, I went down there and I interviewed for Dallas Police Department, and I said, hey, I can fly those. I learned how to fly them at Fort Rucker, Alabama in instrument training. And he threw me the keys. Back then, that actually had an ignition that you turned. And then you got out of the aircraft while you had all the friction applied so it wouldn't fly away without you. And you untied everything. You got back in, threw a clutch, and the blades started to turn. Well, this was completely different and like a step back from the Huey gunships that I had been flying. This was like going back to caveman style. And so we flew around a little bit, and I put it back down. He said, I think we're going to offer you the job. And I thought, wow, okay. I got out of the Army, and I got a job right away. This is great. I said, so I'm going to be a policeman. So I get a badge and a gun? No. No. He said, you see this great big thing between our skids that we're looking at? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's a searchlight. It's a high-intensity searchlight. We're going to tell you where the bad guy is. You just hover out there, find him, turn the light on. We can even see that in the daytime. Being the good gunship pilot that I was, I said, so what happens if he starts shooting at me? And he said, well, you were in the Army, right? You can dodge those bullets. In that, you want me to dodge those bullets? He said, well, okay, just try to stay out of the way, don't get hurt. I said, all right, let's protract it a little further. And exponentially, if he shoots out my spotlight, what do I do? He said, well, we've got 3 of these. So you bring it back, tell maintenance, and get in another one, go back out and put your spotlight back on them. I said, you know, thank you very much. I appreciate the job offer, but I think I'm going to end my flying career right here. And so I did. I never flew again after that. But I went home and started thinking, what did the military give me other than that training that I received that I can actually use in the civilian world? And I thought they gave me mental toughness or the ability to analyze the situation. And if I needed to, call in help or reinforcements. They gave me attitude. It was upbeat, for sure. It had to be, because otherwise you'd be dragging yourself through the mud all the time. But it was realistic, and I put that into I put that into projection as well. Then they gave me goal setting when I first got in the military, and that was really kind of setting goals for us. They would say, go take that hill. And then afterwards they would say, okay, as you're an officer now, figure out how to go take that hill. So that gave me a trend on actually setting goals for myself. Physical fitness, that's a given. You got to be fit in the Army. Helped me stay in shape and reduce stress. They gave me education or learning. They really flipped the switch on me when they put me through helicopter school. I knew nothing about helicopters, and I actually turned out to be a pretty darn good pilot. And they also gave me the best thing that they could have given me, and that was courage. This is not going to be easy trying to get back in civilian life. And it became more and more evident as I applied to different places. But with courage, you can dare to take risks. You can beat your fear. You can have the strength to be compassionate and the wisdom, especially me, to be humble. I did the exact same thing that a lot of people have already spoken about. I felt that I had really served my country, and therefore I was entitled to something. At that stage of my life, big reality check. They were bashing us over the head. They were spitting on us. They were doing everything you can think of when we came back. And we stood out like a sore thumb. I'll get that in a minute. Simply because we had the short haircuts and everybody else was sporting something, rendition of the Beatles or the Monkees. So they knew who we were, had no place to hide. Because of the reception, I eventually just left the military service off my job applications, because people would accuse me of being a druggie, being a baby killer, being a mass murderer. So after a while, I just finally left that off my applications, and I finally got a job. I also learned how to ride road bikes as part of my exercise. But I learned that in Montana. In Montana, you better ride that bike fast, because you never know what's in trail behind you. My choice of profession was outside sales or commission sales. That was the thing I could get into and make the most money at for my family. I already had a little daughter, and my wife was pregnant again with a son. So I needed to support them, but I had to learn how to sell. The people I learned from were Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, and even a guy by the name of Earl Nightingale. If you never heard of them and you're into selling, look them up, because what they teach you is the foundation and basis of sales. If you know how to sell, you can go anywhere. And I did quite well at no matter what company I worked for. And there was about 10 or 12 of them that I worked for along the way, because something would get in the way. They were paying me too much money, or they wanted to hire somebody else, or they wanted to go younger, or they didn't want to pay me anymore and cut my paycheck or make me a sales manager or whatever. But I was recognized by several different companies for my outstanding sales achievement. And then also a Malcolm Baldrige Award that we won for the Graphic Arts Technological Foundation for a different system that we had introduced. It would take me 2 days to explain that to you. But that's all I have left of that award is the pin that we officially won. Corporate America has a tendency, if you're working for the man, so to speak, to birth you out. When you get older, they can hire 3 guys that are younger than you for what they're paying you. So be prepared for that. If you're working for corporate America, eventually you will get birthed out. And I thought I saw Sarah Munger walk in, but her famous comeback as to what would they do without you is the corporate comeback. Find someone else. In my case, they found 3 other people. So I felt very flattered that it took 3 people to replace me. But it still didn't solve my problem. Always forgive your enemies, but never forget their names. You may run into them again. That's from John Fitzgerald Kennedy. It's a quote from him. My next venture into the sales field was with real estate. And that's, I think, the very first picture that it was taken of me as I applied for a real estate job. Real estate is not so much selling a product, although Lord knows it's probably the biggest product you'll ever sell, is a house to someone. But it's really kind of dealing with life changes. When you first get married, there may be just the 2 of you. And next thing you know, there might be 3 or 4 of you. So consequently, trade in that little bungalow you bought, you get something bigger. Then they grow up, and before you know it, they're moving out. They're going to college or having kids of their own. And you're in that 8,000 square foot house, too big, so you downsize or you right size. And so that's what I got into, and that's who I work for. But primarily, I want you to have that because that's my phone number. If you need any help with real estate, let me know. Unabashed, that's just an endorsement, trying to get it out there. But if you have any questions about a veteran or what to do or how to move forward, let me know. Along the way, I found Rotary International through the Metroport Rotary Club. And what I learned with Rotary was something I thought was much better. Try not to become just a person of success, but a person rather of value. If you do, you'll always be successful. There were still times I'd look in the mirror and just remember the veterans and the camaraderie and the people and flying helicopters. I met this fella in Rotary, and one day he said, "Come and talk to us." So I did at Memorial Day. And boy, yeah, I got choked up. I was blubbering about a lot of things. And since then, I've spoken several times to different veterans groups, and it's actually kind of smoothed out because speaking about it helps you tremendously to offload that little box that you have all those deep, dark secrets in, and you bring them to the present, and they're not so daunting anymore. Oh boy, sorry about that. Technology. Give me a second. I'll get to the right one. Carl is a prime example of great people who are really ordinary people committed to their ideals. Or he could be the mighty oak who just yesterday was yesterday's nut that actually that held its ground. Sorry about that. This is my challenge to you. And my challenge reads very simply. Today, as World War II veterans leave us, the Vietnam veterans becoming more the focal point of reference for returning veterans from different conflicts. Oddly enough, there is an astonishing similarity to our return from Vietnam and the vets coming back today. The taunting crowds are absent, but sometimes so are the jobs and the transitional help back into civilian life. There's a very disturbing suicide problem that we're dealing with, and actually a percentage of that is veterans over 55. Talking with other vets, you often find where they are now, maybe where you are, or several years ago, where you were. And you realize their story is your story. I've talked with people from Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's the same thing I went through. It's there. Just keep after it. The dread of speaking about it lessens every time you talk to anybody about it. You don't face the rejection that we did. And this fella is a World War II veteran, and he told me that that's exactly what he did. He started speaking to groups. First of all, he started writing down his experiences, and then he started to go in front of groups and talk about it. So it was very easy for him to do that. World War II veteran that got shot down over Japan. Turned out to be a POW for about 6 months until the liberating army came through. The keeper of the castle is you. The keeper is that caretaker who takes care of or maintains something or someone. Your brothers in arms. Help out. Be a leader. Step up. Tell your story. Talk to them. Keep them from that suicide chart. Leadership is not necessarily about being the best. It's more importantly about making everyone else better. This young lady has made me much better over the years, and it's about 27 years now. But you got to remember, when we first started talking about this, the time frame was 1966, 52 years ago. Carl asked me to speak because he wanted you to see one of these old guys up here that's still alive and talk to you a little bit. You can do it. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. I still love it. I miss it. That's me, and my phone number again. So before I leave you today and ease back into my favorite rocking chair, let me leave you with two thoughts. Be yourself, because everybody else is already taken. And don't take life so seriously, because it's not permanent. God bless you.